Well, hours after the RP manifesto was unveiled, the People's Action Party described its proposals as fairly ad hoc, with little explanation of their rationale, how they'll be financed and how their cost will be borne by taxpayers. That's the view of the PAP's West Coast GRC team, which is up against a Reform Party team.
The PAP West Coast team, which includes two economic heavyweights, Ministers Lim Hng Kiang and S. Iswaran, did not take long to dissect the Reform Party's manifesto. Among the issues they singled out for critique, RP's proposal to return all CPF savings to Singaporeans at age 55. This on top of proposing a $500 monthly pension for those above 65.
If you put the two together, it begs the question why we have a lifelong enforced savings scheme in the form of a CPF with support from the government, with contributions from employers, to return this at the age of 55, only to then impose an additional tax burden on all taxpayers in Singapore when Singaporeans reach the age of 65 with this $500 a month pension. The real point then is when individuals make proposals which are ad hoc in nature because they are seductive, but they fundamentally challenge and potentially jeopardize a fundamentally sound system, we should really ask the question, what is the rationale, what is the implication, and how will you foot the bill for this?
If you have a scheme where we work so hard, making the contributions, the employers, the employees, and the government, and build up a CPF account, and then at the age of 50, we return everything back to you. And then we say, and then Singaporeans say, trust us, we'll look after ourselves. I think that would be very good if everybody can look after themselves. But what if they can't? Then where is the social safety net for such people who cannot look after themselves? And it's from 55 to 85. And the lifespan of Singaporeans are getting longer and longer. And the Reform Party recognizes that, because if they believe that if you return to the people at 55, they all take care of themselves, then they don't need that extra $500 to be given to every senior citizen above 65.
PAP candidate Patrick Tay flagged concerns over RP's proposal to implement a minimum wage.
A minimum wage will become the maximum wage if you set the minimum wage. In many aspects, employers will not be motivated to send workers for training, upgrading, or even to raise the salaries generously because they merely follow the regulated minimum wage. That's one challenge. The other one is, of course, setting a minimum wage will be a challenge in that if we set it too high, it may outprice our workers in Singapore. If we set it too low, our workers will find challenge in facing the higher cost of living or rising cost of living.
Mr. Iswaran warned that RP's proposal to cap foreign workers could severely constrain Singapore's economic growth, while its other proposal of having an auction for the right to work in the country would result in higher costs for businesses and hurt small and medium enterprises, which will lose out in any auction to larger companies.
The question that needs to be put to the other side really is, what is the sum impact of your proposals on individual workers and their job prospects? What is the sum impact of your proposals on businesses in Singapore, especially small and medium-sized enterprises? And ultimately, what is the impact of your proposals on the Singapore taxpayer, not just today's taxpayer, but the taxpayers of future, 5, 10, 15 years from now? And how are you going to account to them, the impact on them, the burden on them of the proposals that you make today?
Mr. Lim also took issue with RP for not spelling out clearly in its manifesto how it planned to pay for all its proposals.
They estimated that there are three ideas: the child support, the senior citizens support, and the MediShield premiums will cost $6 billion. What they did not say is, of course, for the senior citizen support and the MediShield life premium support, this has the potential of ballooning because the number of senior citizens will double by the time we reach 2030. So it may be 6 billion now, but it will, the cost burden will double by 2030. And they say all this will be spent within the budget. But clearly, they have not presented the very important part of the other side of the budget, which is how to generate the growth and how to generate the tax revenue to support all these programs. I think they've been very silent on that. And I think this is what I observe is missing among all the opposition parties' manifesto. Everybody's very happy talking about the spend side, but nobody has presented what are we doing to address the economic challenge, the growth challenge facing us, and how do we generate the resources to provide for Singaporeans and to develop Singaporeans.
As for RP's proposal to reduce national service by a year and set up a professional army, Mr. Lim said that would severely affect the operational capability of Singapore's armed forces. Mr. Iswaran cited it as another example of an ad hoc proposal.
It may sound interesting or appealing to certain sectors, but it doesn't really explain how it can be sustained. We already know the manpower challenges we face. The proposal is to freeze foreign manpower from the Reform Party, and at the same time you want to have additional draws on Singapore's limited manpower now to create a standing army, a professional army. I think you don't need to be a very sophisticated demographer or statistician to work out that the numbers just don't add up.